Welcome to another Mondeo.
No one gets away with anything.
Today with you we are
Jose Rafael Ochoaneri and
Ariana Lopez.
oh my God,
We're
it's been a long
back!
time since we recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since we posted.
Yeah.
It's a new era for the podcast.
Actually, we haven't posted in a week.
So, yeah. You're right. No, never mind.
It is a new era. We have a new direction.
Exacto.
You see what I did there?
We have better stuff, I think.
Yeah, we have some new stuff. My hair is short now, which is amazing.
Are you going to cut it again?
I'm going to keep it cut. Yeah, I'm going to keep it short.
Fair enough.
For the future. Pero bueno, antes de empezar, queríamos decir algo. Vamos a hablar de un tema hoy súper importante para nosotros, del cual we are experts in this subject, in a
we're
sense.
expert on our personal experiences.
Exactly. O sea, we're going to recall a lot of first-hand experience, and so for documentary purposes, o sea, si en verdad alguien quisiera saber esto para un estudio y, o sea, técnicamente hablando, estamos dando un testimonio cierto.
Yeah.
Okay,
if we're speaking about ourselves, then yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about our experiences, but we're not professionals. O sea, ninguno de nosotros es profesional en esto, en los temas que vamos a hablar ahorita. Hay muchas personas y hay un documental que les vamos a recomendar al final de este episodio que sí son profesionales y que hicieron un trabajo increíble y que se los recomendamos muchísimo si lo quieren ver. Pero, disclaimer, we are not professionals. We are not responsible for anything that you do after listening to this episode. And we hope that if you need help or if you need anything professionally, go look for a professional.
Well, then, do you want to say what we're going to talk about today?
No, I don't. Can you say it for me? Because I don't want to say it.
Okay, basically the idea of this episode came from a need or something that we notice in our daily lives. It's like the amount of times that we find ourselves in a situation where we have to explain ¿qué está pasando en Venezuela?
¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué está pasando?
¿Qué pasa en Venezuela? Tipo, is it really that bad? How did you live there? Can people leave the country?
No solo eso, sino que, you know what I find really that bothers me the most is this thing de, tipo, explaining why I'm, me imagino que te pasa lo de, you're very mature because why are you so mature? And it's like, oh, because I lived in Venezuela and that made me grow up a lot. And even like the immature people that we know of in Venezuela are more mature than the immature people in Europe in general. Like there's really mature people in Europe too. And you know them, you can see the way they walk, they talk, it's different. Pero una de las cosas que me pasa es como que en mi entorno personal me toca explicar full Venezuela porque es tipo, ¿por qué eres así? Y que bueno.
Where I come from.
Sí.
But also, o sea, I don't think we're special because of where we come from. I think everyone's special because where they come from.
So no, of course. Yeah, that's what makes you unique.
Exactly.
Pero creo que una de las características más comunes de venezolanos que están en España es que si van a universidades públicas, si trabajan, si son relativamente serios en alguna cosa o si vivieron algo en Venezuela, they're probably more mature than the average Spanish person their age. Porque they had longer childhoods than we did, por razones obvias.
But exacto, sí, pero the thing is, I see that with my other foreign friends. All of my friends like also
they emigrate. Emigrating is a big maturing factor. Exactly. Pero bueno, el caso es que nos pasa en nuestro día a día muchísimo que nos preguntan tipo, ¿qué pasó en Venezuela? Or tipo, they tiptoe around Venezuela and they don't want to talk about it because like it may be awkward and they don't know where to get the information to like be, you know,
politically correct.
Not only politically, I don't like, you can be horribly political with me and I won't mind. Like, muchos de mis amigos que conocen mucho de Venezuela hacen chistes súper feos sobre Venezuela y yo me río muchísimo porque it's part of the you know. Pero el hecho de no poder tener una conversación de verdad porque como somos allá, they feel like they're completely out of depth.
Sí.
Tipo, es como cuando tienes una conversación sobre la Unión Europea. You know a little bit about the European Union.
But you don't.
But you don't know. Y, ojo, yo estoy estudiando en la Unión Europea ahorita, tipo, tengo una clase de Unión Europea and it's nothing compared to what they know just because they lived here. Entonces me imagino que ese es el mismo feeling back. Que es como que, even if this is interesting for me, and even if I, like, studied it once or twice, I don't have a comprehensive, like, idea of what it all, yeah.
Sí.
Y muchas veces lo que tienen son como noticias muy generales que don't go into the reality of what we lived.
Total.
Entonces, esto es un intento de un crash course de Venezuelan history.
Exacto.
Modern, contemporary Venezuelan history. Hablarles un poquito, no solamente de los hechos que sucedieron, porque sucedieron muchas cosas increíbles y otras no tan increíbles. sino contarles algunas historias de personas que son cercanas a nosotros, de nosotros mismos, de vivir en un país como Venezuela y especialmente en estos momentos en específico que están bien interesantes.
And we'll try to be brief. O sea, tampoco nos vamos a... Ni
Pues sí,
cadena
no.
nacional. O sea, we're going to try to say everything we want to say, which is not little.
Yeah.
Tipo, in the most concise way we can.
Well,
Pero
that's going to be a challenge for us, but yeah.
Let's start by the beginning. O sea, tipo, what we want to say is that we want to tell the story. So where did it all begin?
Where did it all begin? Bueno, para muchos es debatible dónde empieza todo. Muchas personas dicen en la historia de los expresidentes venezolanos que fueron corruptos algunos, que no manejaron bien el petróleo, etcétera. Pero la mayoría de las personas, si te tuviesen que decir dónde empieza esto empieza en 1999, cuando Chávez gana, 1998, cuando Chávez gana las primeras elecciones, y 99, cuando entra al poder. Exactly. Es como el momento en el que everything changes. Y creo que antes hubo como muchos indicios. Sería como el prequel. Venezuela prequel es pre-1999. Exacto. La serie de Venezuela empieza tipo la temporada que todos tipo empieza en 1999. Yeah.
Exacto. Star Wars como 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3 es 1999 en adelante y las demás son antes. Pero bueno, qué buena manera de ponerlo. Me encanta.
So, entonces, tipo, like, by this time, Chavez comes to power, right? So, like...
Why?
Well, you can explain that.
Okay, you sure you want to explain why he came to power?
Just go ahead.
Okay, he came to power basically because, la sociedad venezolana estaba un poco dispareja. It was more, it was an inequality thing. First, it was an opportunistic thing. He had the right things at the right time. Mm-hmm. He came from the right background. So he was of the minority in Venezuela who were both angry and dispossessed economically. Mm-hmm. Okay? So he came from part of Venezuela, a very large part of Venezuela, that was having a hard time economically compared to the rest of the country. Like, el resto del país, la élite venezolana was having an amazing time. They were swimming in money and stuff, and they had been politically corrupt for a long time. Two political parties, de Acción Democrática and COPEI, que no me acuerdo cuál es el
no sé.
What the acronym means, pero esos dos partidos canibalizaron la política venezolana por mucho tiempo y llegó un punto en el que their corruption led to such disorder that something like Chavez could happen. Exactly. Someone like Chavez could come around.
Chavez had the legitimacy, the respect, and the charisma needed to like gain the popularity of the majority of people he needed in order to get into power. Right? Yeah. He was a very charismatic leader. He came from very like poor backgrounds. He had una historia muy conmovedora. Una historia muy conmovedora.
Sí, 100%.
And that won people's heart. And you think what you feel and what they felt was what they voted. Voila, that's what you get. Yeah,
there's a lot of people that voted for him. It's widely said that he never lost an election. Like, he was a very popular figure. And he is the first in a very long line of politicians today that get in through democratic means and use their democratic power to undermine democracy itself.
Exacto.
Okay.
Bueno, and like the particularities of what he did was like, first he tried to change the constitution.
He tried to change it by a vote. He lost that vote. Perdió el plebiscito de 2002. Mm-hmm. Because he lost it, he got really angry and he tried to do it himself. He tried again. He lost. The point is, in 2002, there was an attempt to take him out of power. It failed horribly. Mm-hmm. And after that, Chavez said, like, you know what? I'm going to take the gloves off. And this is no longer going to be this, sweet little thing that's going to happen. No, this is going to be hard. And he basically took the gloves off and he decided to, pass a new constitution with all the might of the presidency without taking into consideration any of the other powers, basically.
Yeah. So, like, it's called the Constitution of 1999. It's the 26th constitution of the country.
Yeah.
And so amongst the things that he did, he basically added one star to the flag.
Yeah.
He changed the name of the country. Instead of being República Venezuela, it's like the República Bolivariana de Venezuela.
Yeah, weird. he changed Bolívar's face. So the Bolívar era el prócer de la independencia venezolana. And he basically changed his face so it would be closer to him.
Yeah. And then another thing is like, you know how every country has like legislative, executive, and judicial powers? We have 5, right? So we also have the electoral and the moral power.
Yeah.
Because he decided. I think we're the only country in the world that has
5 powers.
Yeah.
I think there's one that has 4, but I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure the fun thing is that he has. This is genius, by the way.
I know.
Like, separation of powers is the basis of democracy. So if we have more separation of powers, wouldn't there be more democracy? Yeah, that's what a normal person would think, but you are not thinking diabolically enough. Efectivamente.
Exacto.
El punto era que because there's separation of powers, you have 3 powers and they, you know, balance each other out. If you have 5 powers and the person who created the last 2 powers also is a majority winner in both of those sides, then you have a very, very big majority against a very, very small opposition. So he both created this space for there to be opposition, okay, in a way that for people who are not, you know, que no sepan del tema y no sepan que hay 5 poderes, digan como que, bueno, pero they have a national assembly or they have a judicial branch, and they would be like, no, but there should be okay. They and there's balance, and no, there wasn't any balance for a long time.
And yeah, that was more like in the constitutional terms of it. He also changed like the position of the horse and el escudo nacional. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah, in the national shield, he changed the position of
like he just did a bunch of very special things, right, amongst many others. But like unofficially or not necessarily in the constitution, he also changed the time zone.
Yeah, he changed the time zone
of Venezuela to a time zone that no other country in the world had.
Yeah,
because it was like half an hour in between the 2 official time zones.
Yeah. It was basically something that built his cult of personality.
Exactly.
Okay, so Chavez is wildly known for having a religion to his name. So there's people that literally pray to him. Okay, and you know he did all these things that are, well, one of the best examples, and you talk a lot about this, is the eyes. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
It's like Chavez put himself in the same level as God, and he put Bolivar as well.
Yeah, it was Jesus, God, and Bolivar.
Exactly. So it's like the 3 most important men for everyone.
The Holy Trinity.
Exactly, right? Hence why he changed Bolivar's face, because he had the power to do that. He wanted to also show that he had the power to change time, which is something that only like
God
someone superior can do, right? And then he had like this thing, even after he was dead. I think it was even more after he was dead.
Yeah.
That you had Misión Vivienda, which is basically a socialist project to give houses to people who live in the hoods, en las favelas, en los ranchos. I don't know how you call it in English, right? So these buildings, not only were they horrible, but they had like in the walls the Chavez eyes painted in them along with his signature. So literally like Big Brother's watching you vibes, but like make it real.
Yeah, and there's parks that the stairs to the parks have his eyes, and it's creepy as hell. It's some of the more 1984 things that we have in Venezuela.
Exactly. He also had like this anti-imperialist doctrine, which basically just claimed the power of a nation that's speaking from the voice of a revolution and of the unheard against the big nations trying to oppress us, right? Which is a beautiful speech.
And the other thing is that Chavez had a lot of, he was very strategic with the whole OPEC crisis, okay? For those of you who don't know, he basically is the reason why in the early 2000s to late 2000s, he basically helped there be a very high price of foreign oil, which brought a lot of money into Venezuela, and with which he tried to like paint the finger towards the U.S., you know, very, very emphatically, and like granted, he did, like he was hailed through the left wing world because of that. But everything else he did inside the country was just a shit show. And
then he had one of the, I think it was the highest oil price ever. He had huge revenues, but the country relied 97% only in oil revenues, right? So he had like this huge income and flow of money, which translated in him being able to finance a socialist project, which in a normal country is absolutely impossible.
While paying off every other country in the world.
While financing exactly other countries and taking money for themselves, right? But when the the fantasy's over and the oil prices go back to normal, evidently everything that they'd done before was not sustainable anymore. And there was nothing else to bring them back the revenues that they needed. Because our economy was so reliant on oil that we did not know how to do anything else.
You know, I want to take an aside at the moment for 1 second, because there's an idea that Venezuela had that is one of the best things that ever happened to Venezuela. And it's an idea that Chavez broke down, okay?
Sembrar el petróleo.
PDVSA.
Okay.
So PDVSA is the national oil company in Venezuela. So Venezuela was nationalizing in the mid 20th century. It started nationalizing oil. It was all controlled by private companies. It was like 90-10. They got it to 100% control for Venezuelans. Okay, but PDVSA was a private company owned by the government. So the people who would make the decisions of the company would be literally the most qualified people in the country. Literally the most qualified people in the country, and they would make the economic decisions to make that company run to the best market revenue possible, but all of that revenue went to the government and the people. Okay. And it was like it's literally one of the best socialists, well, socially, like, it's one of the best solutions for the spreading of wealth and avoiding inequality in a country that there has been. Actually, the Nordic countries copied this. That's why some of the Nordic countries are really good at this. They copied this idea from Venezuela. They are raging capitalists because that company literally is like controlling part of the world, but it would make it so that the people had enough for everybody to go around. One of the reasons why a lot of people, whenever I have arguments about Chavez, the reason why I dismount most people's arguments is that I explain this and I say he basically cut that off and started pouring the tubes that would go to the country. He put them in his pocket and in other countries' pockets. Exactly. And I think that's the true crime of the Venezuelan, the Chavista regime. It's
amongst others, I think.
Amongst many other things. Okay, so what happens in 2012, 2013?
No, 2013, Chavez dies.
Yeah.
And then we think it's the end.
I think it's like in 2 days or something.
See, it was like March 13th or March
4th, I think.
I think it was a bit later.
Yeah?
Yeah, around, like, it's one of the first days of March, right? And I remember we were talking about it, like, what was your day? How was your day like the day that
where
Chavez
were you?
died?
Where were you when Chavez died? Yeah. Yeah. Yo estaba en Chacao, en casa de un amigo, haciendo una presentación de la Primera Guerra Mundial. Tipo, estaba literalmente talking about how Duke Franz Ferdinand was murdered, and it sparked the First World War.
Exactly. I remember I was home. I was with my mom and my grandma, and we were watching TV. And we were what, like 11? Yeah, 11, 12. And by that time, we already had such a political notion that, like, Chavez died. You feel like they're like a relief. Like,
yeah.
This is finally over.
A lot of people got really drunk, partied, everything. It was a moment of celebration. Like,
because democratically, it was very hard for him to ever leave power. Because one, people wouldn't vote against him. And two, he would just be... He was able to change, like, the presidential period, like, extended and extend the amount of periods that you can have.
Yeah, so he...
Infinitely.
Yeah, so he ended the 2-term presidency. He made it an infinitive terms. And then he also went from 5 to 6 years president. He turned it from 4 to 5 and then 5 to 6.
No, porque en ADCOPEI, it's 5 years with no re-election. Por eso es que...
That's why it's 5. Okay.
Then in the 1999, he moves it to 6. I don't know if you could have infinite terms or 2, and then he changed it later.
Yeah.
But the point is, democratically, it was very hard to leave.
Yeah.
So he dies, and everyone's like, okay, now
this is the
time.
Opportunity.
We have some elections with Capriles, who had just lost elections against Chavez the year before.
Yeah.
Who goes against Maduro, who's the current president of Venezuela now.
Yeah, so he was the heir, the heir to the Chavez's throne. Well, that's heavily debated as well. So whether he was legitimate or not, whether he's a puppet or not, a lot of that is debated too. But
he's still there. And the one thing I remember, it's like, I had a swimming professor, right? And he was Chavista.
Yeah.
I remember. And my parents were speaking about it. And one time he said, look, even if I don't think Maduro is qualified to be in power, before dying, Chavez said that we should vote for him. And that's why I'm doing it. So Chavez was such a god that even after he was dead, he ruled people's political decisions into voting for him.
Yeah, it was a horrible. A lot of people say that the 2013 elections, Capriles versus Maduro, were won by the opposition. I'm skeptical. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be able to know. What I do know is that the company that took care of the elections, you know, when they had the last elections, I think it was 2020, 2019 or something.
In Venezuela?
Yeah, the last presidential.
2019.
In the 2019 elections, that company got like international coverage for being a corrupt company, and they'd been doing the elections in Venezuela for 10 years.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna lean... the biggest hope that we had...
extinguished quickly, very quickly. And then, you know, 2014 is when what we know more about Venezuela. So we were about 13, 12
we were like
years old.
Like fifth grade.
I was in 6th grade, yeah.
It's like we remember our protests like periods of time because we usually did not have class.
Yeah.
Entonces era como que, okay, temporada de protestas, ¿te acuerdas? Que en esa temporada no tuviste clase. O era un día sí, otros días no.
So we had been primed for the online class world for a very long time, but we'd been perfecting it for like 6 years. Y me acuerdo de eso, 2014 fue las primeras tipo ronda de protestas. I think there were a couple of deaths.
Yeah, there were.
There were a couple of deaths. None of them sung so much as the others later, but there were a couple of deaths. I remember that my sister was like in high school, last year of high school, you know, like she was like about to graduate high school. And so it was very much a time where my sister would go out and protest a little bit, but not that much. Esa fue la época de la guarimba.
Ah, claro. Sí,
esa era la época de las barricadas y las guarimbas. So they would basically close down a street with,
they would just literally, imagine you're playing with your siblings to make a wall in your room with pillows. Just take it to the street. Put like anything that you can find and make sure you create chaos.
That's it, yeah. And it was the beginning of the pull a shirt up with the part like this. So
las bombas lacrimógenas.
It's the beginning of las bombas lacrimógenas. Me acuerdo perfecto que mi hermana muchas veces iba al colegio y decía, mi mamá llegaba a la casa y le preguntaban, ¿te lanzaron bomba lacrimógena hoy?
Sí.
And it would be,
for us as kids, I do remember it being like, oh, protestas? I don't have class. It would be a happy thing.
Yeah, it would be. But then it was like...
Claro, sí. There was always like this political awareness, which is what we were talking about before. Like the fact that we were born where we were born, one of the things that changes our brain, like, disposition, it's the fact that we know about politics and we have conscience of our existence.
O sea, desde tercer grado, cuarto grado, I know a lot about politics.
Because they talked to us about it in school. Our parents always talked about it. You would listen to the news, like. Everyone was always talking about politics. Let
me put it this way, in a bit of an academic way. It was the most direct level of our pyramid of needs. Because depending on what happened in the political, it would change our lives.
Exacto.
So we knew from a very young age to pay attention to it.
Exacto. It's like I knew who I was rooting for in elections, and that was 8 years old.
Well, we talked about this before, and I think we've recorded this episode a couple of times before. But we talked about that we were a bit... so Chavez, because of all his godly power, he indoctrinated people, a lot of people. That's why even after his death, people would still follow him. That's typical dictator... cult of the personality stuff. But the thing that most people don't contemplate is the opposition does the exact same thing, but in reverse. They do anti-indoctrination, which is in itself another form of indoctrinating people. It's saying, you know, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. It's the creation of an identity through opposition. And, you know, it works because it's very effective in rallying people to your cause. And it works because, you know, it's a clear message, and part of the message is really true. Part of the message is this guy's a dictator who is oppressing us and who doesn't want us to have any of our freedoms, and he's, you know, está siendo un hijo de puta, por así decirlo. Y en verdad, parte de eso es realidad, pero cuando te vas a Venezuela o cuando creces suficiente, you realize like, oh, wait. That's not exactly true. Sí. Like, oh, we fucked up here, and here in the past. That led to Chavez. And like most people are like, no, he just stole everything and he got there. And creo que los primeros momentos que me pasó fue cuando me dijeron, no, Chávez llegó a la presidencia democráticamente. Y yo, ¿cómo? No, pero no entiendo.
Wasn't he evil from the beginning?
Wasn't he like the devil? And And it's like, well, yeah, like
But
a lot
no.
of people consider him to be the devil. Yo me acuerdo esa época, 2014 más o menos, era Minecraft was a boom. Y me acuerdo perfecto que la gente would go to the Nether and they would build with like Nether rock. They would build like Chavez's grave in Nether.
¿De verdad?
Te lo juro por mi vida que me acuerdo de eso demasiado. Decía, tipo, bajé al cementerio de Chávez y they would go down to the Nether and they
Oh
would
my
build it.
God.
Yeah, I remember that so vividly.
And there's this thing, like, I was talking to a guy that works in politics, tipo venezolano que trabaja en política ahorita, y me dice, look, the problem with the Venezuelan opposition is that they never did politics. Politics always was, we need to take down the government.
Yeah.
The notion of a political proposition for us was so irrelevant, and we were so desperate to simply get rid of what we had, that perhaps political parties rarely ever had to make an effort to build a strong political campaign with something beyond, look, we're not them.
Yeah, no, and there wasn't. I think la política Chacao did some of that.
¿Sabes? Ahora sí, como que los gobernadores, ¿cómo se llama? Alcaldes de Chacao y tal, como que you had some people that were doing some politics.
But there was never top bottom political campaign. It was always from bottom up. Like the people who were in the lower quadrant, like the people who were starting out in politics in Venezuela, our friends that would start to do, that would start to do politics when they were younger, they would do stuff. But it was really small scale stuff. And it was to get to a higher level and they would stop.
Claro. So basically you were like, okay, I like him better than her. Then they tried to put them all together and simply all united go against the government.
Unidad Democrática.
Still didn't make it.
Yeah.
All right, still here till the day. And we, in theory, have some elections coming ahead. And still, we have no successful enough candidate to take in a potential opportunity of facing an election. Because we haven't done politics for the past 24 years.
One of the best things about living in Spain, what that has taught me, is that there is something really precious about being a politician that has stuff that has a resume to his name and or to her name. In Madrid's case, Isabel Ayuso, independently of whether you like her politically or not, she's attacked a lot in Congress. Mm. And whenever they attack her, she's like, look, which was the part of Spain that did the best during the whole crisis that we had the last 3-4 years? It was Madrid. You can't say anything about my government. I did well. And you have to face that. Either you come from right or left. Like, I did well. And that's not something you can debate. Mm-hmm. And most people shut up. And it's something that the opposition has never been able to say. Except with a few exceptions. I think there's a couple of governors who did a pretty good job. And look...
O las elecciones de 2015.
Okay, so let's go.